Hello,
Hi, Jason.
Mr. Hudson. How are you?
Doing okay. We've had another ramming of one of our U.S. naval ships.
I saw that. Yeah, the USS John McCain.
Right. Now, if you recall, we had expressed an opinion, or a concern rather,
Mm-hmm.
on the Fitzgerald when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the Navy came out with various various propaganda stories, in our opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are seeing a pattern, and now we have yet another ship that has been rammed, and 10 sailors missing and possibly dead.
Oh my gosh.
So we've been looking into some things, Jason, and before I get into it, because I think we have identified a weapon that may be being used against these U.S. ships.
Really?
Yeah, that's a scary situation. That's a scary proposition.
It is.
Because obviously that would be an act of war.
Uh-huh.
So let me start out by saying to your audience that it is not possible for a U.S. naval ship to be rammed by a cargo ship or other vessel without the captain, the executive officer, the crew, without them knowing that it's going to happen way before the incident would occur.
Right.
The reason I say that is because naval vessels are operating on a 24/7, 365 basis, depending on the number of men and women that they have on board. They are divided up into shifts. And so typically a sailor will work 16 hours a day, sometimes more, and then he will be able to be given adequate time to sleep. And sometimes that does not come in an 8-hour segment. Sometimes they'll be given 4 hours. They'll have to report back. They'll be given another 4. So it really kind of fluctuates based on the need of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And the condition that ship is sailing in.
Right.
Complete peacetime, crowded waters,
Right.
etc.
Mm-hmm.
On that ship, you have a bridge, which is where the steering wheel is for the ship, and it has its own couple radar systems for navigation and navigation. The bridge is in contact with all of the various electronic systems of the ship.
Right.
In other words, it's in touch with the radio room. It's in touch with the sonar room. It's in touch with fire control.
That's the command center.
Fire control is the people that actually fire the missiles and stuff. They cause that to happen.
But the bridge, of course, is the command center of the whole ship.
Well, then there's another one. There's another command center
Mm-hmm.
that's hidden inside the ship, typically below the bridge and the bows of the ship, sometimes above deck, sometimes below, but typically above deck, right below or near the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And that room is called the Combat Information Center, what is referred to as CIC.
Okay.
In the Combat Information Center, you have an officer in charge. It could be the executive officer with the captain on the bridge, or if the captain is getting some sleep, the executive officer may be on the bridge, and another officer, a CIC command officer, will be in the CIC.
Right.
Up on the bridge, along with the acting captain, you have your lookouts, and that means you have people looking forward from the bow. You have people on port, starboard, and you have at least one or two people on the aft of the ship. And the reason they're there is because they are going to span the area by eyesight with various types of binoculars.
Right.
And what they do is that, let's say, for example, in CIC, an individual there, which is where your radar systems are kept,
Mm-hmm.
and they see something come up onto the screen of the radar. And bear in mind, these radar systems are very sophisticated,
Yeah.
and they can see a ship or ships or other objects for many, many, many miles out.
Right.
You have radar systems looking for aerial objects, and you have radar systems looking for surface objects. You have your sonar looking for, obviously, for submarines.
Mm-hmm.
And their job is to give a visual confirmation. Yes, I see the plane off the starboard bow at such and such degrees, estimated elevation, and they're there to confirm visually what the Combat Information Center is seeing. So all of this works together. The captain of the ship, the acting captain on the bridge, he is very much aware of everything taking place around him.
Mm-hmm.
The radar systems know where all of the various surface ships are. Aviation radar knows where all of the aviation planes are that are flying, and they even have an identification system
Mm-hmm.
that they use,
Right.
so that they can literally identify a plane, identify a ship.
Mm-hmm.
Ship has an identification system to let other ships around it know, hey, by the way, I am the Memphis Maersk, for example.
Right.
So in order for someone to say that they were unaware that they were going to be rammed, because not only do they know where these objects are, they also know the direction they're traveling in relation to the direction that they are traveling in.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally plot these. Old school, they would plot these on a plexiglass board with the tracker on one side and CIC command on the other side. The tracker is actually he would have to learn to write backwards.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
so that the CIC commander can look at the board
Oh, yeah.
and read it normally.
I've seen that in movies. The guy standing behind the glass. Right. Right.
Yeah. Today, obviously, that is electronic. There's, basically flat screen monitors, etc. But in the event that those would go down, they could go old school and go back to the glass, to the glass boards.
A lot of redundancy, obviously, on these types of vessels.
Correct. So, but the main thing for people I want them to understand is it is not possible for a naval ship, to not know what is going on and what the relationship is of these other vessels, including itself, and be rammed without somebody knowing.
Yeah.
Period. Not possible.
And here it is twice in less than 2 months.
Exactly. So then the question has to be raised then, how is it possible for these vessels to be rammed like that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been looking into it, like I said, and we have been looking at various possibilities. But the one that we have zeroed in on would be that the ship was malfunctioning and disabled.
Mm-hmm.
How is that possible? Well, maybe we have a bunch of terrorist sailors on board. No, I doubt that.
Yeah.
Really. Maybe people are derelict in their duties and just not paying attention. No. When you consider the number of people that are involved in CIC and the bridge, you'd have to have so many people be derelict in their duties and not doing their job,
Yeah.
and not paying attention either. That's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves only one thing. The ship is being disabled. How? Then becomes the big question. So we began looking into the possibilities of new weaponry that might be able to disable a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've come across, something that one of the groups monitors this, and they've been watching it, is that China has developed a new microwave pulse weapon.
Mm.
They had been testing it and they were able to prove that it disables missiles and that it can paralyze a tank by disrupting its electronics array.
Huh.
And so it's been in development, and when they first developed it, it was really a huge machine, and it was not really good for what we would call a weapons platform.
Uh-huh.
And a platform is simply what would carry the weapon,
Right.
based on its size, etc. And you would develop a platform for it. And if the weapon can be miniaturized, I mean, you can take it all the way down, say, to a human platform.
Uh-huh.
And with the new technology, drone technology and stuff, I mean, it's just a matter of how far can you miniaturize a weapon, and you can take it all the way down to a small, to a small drone platform, possibly.
I imagine an EM weapon like that requires a substantial power supply.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It does require substantial power, and so, but on a ship you would have that. You would, and in a tank you would have plenty of power.
Uh-huh.
But depending on where this microwave weapon is, obviously you're going to have plenty of power in order to operate it.
Right.
So what we found was that for over 6 years, a Chinese scientist by the name of Huang Wenhuo and his team at the Northwest Institute of Nuclear Technology in Xi'an, China, they've been working on these potent microwave weapons. They developed one, and in January of 2017, they received the National Science and Technology Progress Award because they were able to take this microwave pulse weapon and reduce it down to the size of a lab bench, and yet increase its strength.
Right.
What they accomplished that we know of, that we've been able to get out of China. And you can imagine that if this information has been released on purpose, or it was found out and the Chinese know about it, chances are the weapon is a lot more powerful than what has been, than what we know.
Right.
But during testing, they were in fact able to point this at a tank and completely shut that tank down. So, generally, microwave weapons that shut down these electronic systems, what it makes them very dangerous, in our opinion, is that these seem to work even against the shielding that the militaries have been developing and employing to protect against a electromagnetic pulse,
Right.
EMP.
Yeah.
Well, these microwave weapons, this one in China, the EMP shielding doesn't help it, doesn't protect anything.
Wow.
So they're able to create this huge amount of directed energy, and they pulse that out to the object they want to hit. And what it does is that energy interferes and literally overloads the electronic systems on the ship, in the tank, or whatever, and just literally fries the components, or can fry them, but in either case it'll shut them down.
Sort of leaves the ship blind.
That's what we think has happened. We believe that there is a possibility that China has developed this microwave pulse weapon, and they're testing it on U.S. ships, and at the same time sending a message of their capability.
Wow. I mean, that's fully an act of war, to point a directed EM weapon at a U.S. military vessel and then ram it with a cargo ship. Who controls the cargo ship in this scenario?
Well, we're not sure. It is possible, but we have no proof on this. But let's think in terms of how they might control a cargo ship. Because chances are this weapon is on the cargo ship that rams the vessel.
Mm-hmm.
Or it may be possible that the weapon is actually on board a submarine, a Chinese submarine.
Wow.
The submarine surfaces, it pulses the weapon on the ship, and then the cargo ship rams it. Now, there still has to be somebody on that cargo ship. Well, what are the possibilities of that? Well, you could have a spy on there, or a couple, Chinese agents. But now you're dealing with a whole crew of people, and the captain of the ship, and that kind of makes it difficult. Or you could have a special forces team on board. Still, that makes it difficult, because somewhere along the way, somebody you would think on that ship is going to talk. Or maybe the ship has been, they've taken control of the ship via some kind of a computer hacking device, and the ship loses control of the ship.
Wow.
Now you've got a ship fighting to gain control, and can't, and they can't figure out why or what's going on. Submarine, some kind of platform comes up, maybe an aerial platform for all we know. Boom, pulses the U.S. vessel. Boom, somebody takes over the cargo vessel and rams the U.S. ship. We know that there's a lot of variables to this. We understand there's a lot of speculation, but this is really starting to fit together.
If this EM weapon were on a submarine, would the submarine have to surface? Wouldn't electromagnetic energy work through water?
To our knowledge, that EMP energy weapon would not work in water.
Uh-huh.
But we're not 100% sure on that right now. We believe that for that EMP weapon to work, that it may have to be
clear line of sight.
Yeah. But we're not making we're still looking into that possibility that a pulse weapon like that could be used underwater. We just don't know. That's the best thing to say. When you don't know, is you don't know.
It's an interesting part of the process for the crowdsourced community to experience. Whenever something like this happens, I mean, obviously it happens once, there's a possibility that it could have been some sort of accident. But when you describe all the redundant systems, all the redundant personnel, et cetera, that's all in place to avoid accidents, of course, and reduce the statistical likelihood of accidents to a near infinitesimal, making it virtually impossible. So when two exactly similar events like this occur in such short time span, like we said, less than 2 months, the possibility of coincidence starts to be effectively eliminated, and so the assessment process begins, and we don't have all the answers, so start to use the best information to form an assessment. And obviously that's not a guess, it's a very informed hypothesis that's being built. Now, Mr. Hudson, I'm just looking online while you're talking to me here at an article about the collision that occurred just 2 months ago with the USS Fitzgerald and the ACX Crystal. Now, in all of the reporting that we've done, and of course Joe Napoli has been all over this, so much of the merchant marine shipping industry is controlled by the Maersk company. I find it interesting that this is not a Maersk vessel that would hit. I wonder if that means anything.
It's hard to say, Jason. We know that the vessel that hit the Fitzgerald has some, there's some interesting things on it, because it's who it was owned by and who the crew was, and supposedly there was a possibility that there may have been an individual or individuals of Muslim faith. Well, I'm not going to go there right now, and I'll tell you why. Because the stories of the Fitzgerald from the Navy, and including the cargo ship, have changed and changed and changed. It's almost like they're hiding something, definitely hiding something, and they can't seem. And the stories keep changing, and the testimonies of the testimony of the captain of the Fitzgerald, the testimony of the crew, the testimony of the supposed testimonies, because we're not even able to see those off of the cargo ship.
Right.
They're definitely hiding that, and so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
What people need to understand, though, is that in the world of intelligence and information, it's not, as much as we'd like it to be absolute cut and dry 100%. It never is. I mean, It gets there eventually.
Right.
So I noticed that there were some, a few, not very many, but a few negative comments about, well, why can't he just say this or that? It doesn't work like that. And if people think that it does, sorry, it just doesn't. Anybody tells you that it does, I mean, they're lying.
Right.
This is almost like playing 3D chess, and when you're playing on one or two of the other boards, you're required to wear a blindfold.
Right.
So, but eventually things do line up if you continue to pursue it. But that's what we think. Wanted to give you an opportunity to know what was going on. I know you like to get this stuff out quick.
Yeah.
And but that's our concern. If in fact they have developed a weapon, that's interesting to say the least. But if they're using it,
Yeah.
that's what has us concerned. If they're actually using it, it's definitely an act of aggression.
You know, at the risk of asking you to speculate, Mr. Hudson, let me just ask you one final question. Do you think there's any significance in the fact that the ship that was hit is the USS John McCain?
In the name of the ship?
Yeah.
Not at this time, but it is something of interest to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the other thing. You've got to be able to keep an open mind and look at all the different angles, the potentialities, right?
Right.
That's why if you get in with a group of intelligence professionals, especially the analysts, there truly isn't any stupid questions.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, they want everything on the table. What are the possibilities? And
Right.
obviously, some of those are going to prove themselves quickly to throw this out. That's
Mm-hmm.
just not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
But the best teams of analysts, they're able to set aside their personal opinions and maybe personal, the sandpaper between a couple of them.
Mm.
They're able to set those differences aside and attack these kind of issues openly and really explore them.
Right.
But when you consider Senator McCain and his, in my opinion, a very dark past and present,
Yep.
and the things that he's been involved with, why not? It's like, is somebody trying to send him a message?
That's what I'm thinking.
Keep your mouth shut.
Or something.
Or you're vulnerable, or we're going to take. Yeah, it's hard to say, but you got to look at that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll be very interested to see what the merchant marine ship was and who owns it, and we'll watch this as it develops. I'll be sure to put this up right away, Mr. Hudson. I got to thank you again for a great insight into what's going on there.
Yeah, I also sent you, Jason. It's been a while, but we have a friend who is open to the public. Mm-hmm. Florida Marquis.
Ah, yes.
Okay, you might want to give him a call. He might be willing to be a guest on the show or something. I don't know. Great guy, former Intel. Mm-hmm. And he really did an amazing job on following the Fitzgerald, and now he's obviously going to be on this one as well.
I will get in touch with him. That's a good idea.
Might be a good contact for you. Okay, buddy. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson.
Bye-bye.